You know, when you think of the absolute top tier of luxury, I'm talking iconic names like Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, or that little blue box from Tiffany & Co. You probably picture them as these separate, competing empires, right? Well, what if I told you they all bow to the same emperor? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on LVMH, the powerhouse that has absolutely mastered the art of selling desire.
Okay, so let's start with a puzzle. You've got Tiffany, the legendary jeweler. You have Dior, the peak of Parisian high fashion. And then you have Sephora, the place you pop into at the mall for makeup. What on earth could possibly be the thread connecting these three completely different brands?
Well, the answer is kind of simple, but it's also absolutely mind-blowing. One single family, the Arnaults, sits at the top of the massive conglomerate that owns every single one of them, plus dozens more. We're not just talking about a company here. This is a modern-day dynasty.
To really get a handle on this, let's first just dig into the sheer scale of this empire. The numbers behind LVMH are, frankly, hard to believe. First, let's talk money. In 2022 alone, LVMH pulled in over $86 billion in revenue. That's a 23% jump from the year before. This company just keeps posting record year after record year, and that's the engine that fuels its insane growth.
And that revenue comes from a portfolio of 75, count them, 75 prestigious brands, or maisons as they call them. We're talking everything from watchmakers like Tag Heuer to champagne houses like Moet Chandon. Each one is a giant in its own field, but they're all part of this one huge family. And who makes all this happen? A global army of over 196,000 people, spread out across 81 different countries. So yeah, this is not just some French company. It is a global operation on a scale that's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
This chart right here really tells the whole story. Look at LVMH at $86.3 billion. Now look at its next largest competitor, Richemont, which, by the way, owns huge names like Cartier. They brought in just under $21 billion. It's not even close. LVMH doesn't just lead the luxury market, it completely owns it. You know, some people argue that besides maybe Apple, no other company on the planet dominates its industry so completely.
So who's the architect behind this incredible empire? Let's talk about the man at the very top, Bernard Arnault, who happens to be the world's richest man.
This quote really gets to the core of how he thinks. Arnault isn't worried about next quarter's profits. His entire vision is about creating brands that are, for all intents and purposes, eternal. He wants to make sure that the desire you feel for a Louis Vuitton bag is just as strong a decade from now, or even 100 years from now. People who've worked with him describe this really unique mix of traits. On one hand, he's known as a ruthless, absolutely brutal negotiator. But on the other, he has this deep, intuitive gut feeling for luxury and art. He's incredibly courageous, willing to take enormous risks. And, this is so important, when he buys a brand, he almost always keeps the existing creative teams in place. He gets that each of these houses has its own unique soul. And this family structure is exactly how he protects that long-term vision. At its heart, LVMH is a family business. All 5 of his children have senior roles across the company, from Tiffany to Dior. In the luxury world, where heritage and legacy mean everything, this gives them a kind of consistency that a normal corporation just can't match. Okay, so we have the vision and the visionary, but how did the empire actually get this huge? Well, the strategy has been crystal clear. Just relentless, aggressive acquisitions. This timeline shows you the pattern. They just target iconic brands, one after another. And this isn't even all of them, but just look at the price tags. Bulgari in 2011, the luggage maker Rimowa in 2016, a massive $13 billion deal for Dior in 2017, and then the blockbuster, nearly $16 billion acquisition of Tiffany & Co. in 2021. And that Tiffany deal? It is a perfect case study of the Arnault method in action. They had a deal agreed upon right before the pandemic. Then the world shuts down. Arnault hits pause and reevaluates the whole thing. What followed was an ugly, brutal negotiation that even went to court. But in the end, he closed the deal. And get this, just 3 years later, Tiffany's profits have doubled to over $1 billion a year. That's the magic and the aggression of Bernard Arnault right there.
Look, buying up brands is one thing, but the real genius of LVMH is how they don't just sell products, they sell a dream. So how do they do it? How do they create, and even harder, maintain that feeling of pure desire?
This quote from a former Louis Vuitton CEO is everything. The strategy is this incredibly delicate balancing act. See, if luxury is only for the super rich, Your market is just too small. You have to be accessible enough for a lot of people to buy in, but you have to stay exclusive enough to keep the dream alive. In his words, democratic, but not vulgar. It's a tightrope walk.
So how do they walk that line? Oh, they're masters at it. They tap right into youth culture with totally unexpected collabs, like Louis Vuitton and the streetwear brand Supreme. Their stores aren't just stores, they're more like churches to the brand. These amazing, immersive experiences designed to make you forget about the price tag. They give their star designers total creative freedom. They offer a whole range of prices, from a $500 wallet to a $5,000 bag, and they invest millions training artisans to protect that special savoir-faire, the expert know-how behind their products. And the result of all this? A customer base that is unbelievably resilient. I mean, even as prices climb and inflation hits the rest of the economy, the LVMH customer just keeps on buying. After the pandemic, people went on what they called revenge spending sprees, just dying to experience life and luxury again after being locked down. But in the crazy, fast-paced world of fashion and luxury, staying on top is always the hardest part. So what does the future hold for LVMH, and what are they doing to prepare for it?
They've definitely got some major challenges on the horizon. The counterfeit market is a huge $500 billion problem. Economic ups and downs, especially in a massive market like China, can really hurt sales. And of course, there's the constant pressure to just stay relevant. But LVMH is already on it. They've developed something called the Aura blockchain to help customers track a product's authenticity. They're pouring money into experiences, like their portfolio of Belmont hotels. And they're protecting their future by creating apprenticeship programs for young artisans. And here's the most important thing to understand. LVMH isn't planning for the next 2 years. They're planning for the next 100 years. It's that long-term thinking, that obsession with legacy that really separates them from everyone else. Which brings us to the biggest question of all, the one at the very heart of this empire. Desire, it's just a feeling, right? It's fleeting. It changes with trends and time. So how in the world do you build a $500 billion company on something so intangible and then make it last for centuries?
Maybe the best answer came from someone who was just standing on a street corner in Manhattan, completely surrounded by LVMH stores. And the realization was pretty simple. It's Bernard Arnault's luxury world, and we're all just shopping in it.
And that's all for this explainer. Thanks for tuning in.